The first envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Noah Brooks almost threw it away without opening it. There was no return address, no postage stamp from any recognizable city, and no handwritten name beyond his own. The paper itself felt unusually thick, yellowed by age, as though it had been sitting inside a forgotten drawer for decades before finally being delivered. He stood in the kitchen of his apartment in Portland, turning the envelope over several times before carefully breaking the brittle seal. Inside rested only two things. The first was an old black and white photograph. The second was a folded sheet of paper containing a single sentence. If you want to find your brother, come to Ashwood this Sunday. Leave before sunset. No signature. No explanation. Nothing else. For several minutes Noah simply stared at the photograph. It showed a quiet American town somewhere deep in the countryside. A narrow main street stretched between small brick buildings. An old church stood near the center. A water tower rose above rows of maple trees whose leaves suggested early autumn. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Until he noticed the date. October 12, 1989. His brother disappeared in October of 1989. Noah slowly lowered himself into a chair. 15 years had passed since Daniel Brooks had vanished without leaving behind a single clue. The official investigation ended after 6 months. Search teams found nothing. Police questioned everyone who had known him. His abandoned pickup truck was discovered beside an old highway nearly 100 miles from home. The keys were still in the ignition. His wallet remained on the passenger seat. The driver's door stood open. There were no footprints. No blood. No signs of violence. It was as though Daniel had stepped into empty air and never returned. Their parents never recovered. His mother spent years believing Daniel would someday knock on the front door again. His father stopped mentioning his eldest son entirely. Photographs slowly disappeared from the house. Family conversations carefully avoided his name. By the time Noah reached adulthood, it often felt as though Daniel had never existed. Only Noah refused to forget. He became a photojournalist partly because of his brother. Daniel had carried a camera everywhere. He believed every photograph captured something people usually overlooked. Pictures remember what people forget. Those had been his favorite words. Noah had repeated them silently countless times over the years. Now another photograph had found its way into his hands. He turned it over. His pulse immediately quickened. Written neatly across the back appeared 5 words. Daniel took this himself. Noah felt his throat tighten. The handwriting wasn't familiar. But someone clearly knew exactly who had taken the picture. He searched every inch of the envelope again. Nothing. No fingerprints. No address. No hidden note. Only silence. That afternoon he drove to the county records office. Ashwood did not appear on any modern map. The clerk searched statewide databases. Nothing. Historical records. Nothing. Postal archives. Nothing. The town officially did not exist. Noah wasn't satisfied. Old newspaper collections occupied an entire floor beneath the building. Dust covered most of the shelves. Hours passed before he found anything. A newspaper dated October 1989. One tiny article buried near the bottom of page 7. Highway closed after dense fog near Ashwood County Road. The article contained only 4 short paragraphs. Several drivers had reported unusually heavy fog causing temporary road closures. Police advised avoiding the area until visibility improved. No injuries. No further details. The accompanying photograph showed almost nothing. Only a narrow country road disappearing into white mist. Noah copied the article. Something about it bothered him. The phrase, Ashwood County Road. There was no Ashwood on any map. Why would a county road carry the name of a town that supposedly never existed? He spent the next 2 days searching archives, libraries, and historical societies. Every answer created another question. Tax records listed businesses whose addresses included Ashwood. Old weather reports occasionally mentioned temperatures recorded there. Several church bulletins referred to charity events held inside the town. Yet no official government document acknowledged that Ashwood had ever existed. It was as though someone had erased only the town itself while leaving scattered traces behind. Sunday arrived beneath gray skies. Noah packed lightly. His cameras. Extra batteries. A notebook. Flashlights. Food. Water. The mysterious photograph remained tucked safely inside his jacket pocket. The directions came from an old highway map discovered in the historical archives. None of the roads appeared on modern GPS systems. His phone repeatedly announced that he had left all mapped routes. Eventually even the navigation signal disappeared. The asphalt narrowed into cracked pavement. Forests surrounded both sides of the road. The farther he drove, the fewer signs of civilization remained. Nearly 4 hours later he noticed the first unusual detail. Every road sign had been removed. Only empty metal poles remained beside intersections. Someone had deliberately unscrewed every sign. Several miles farther, abandoned gas stations began appearing along the roadside. Their windows remained intact. Their doors locked. Dust covered everything. Yet none looked vandalized. It was as though every business had simply closed one afternoon and never reopened. Clouds gathered overhead. Rain threatened but never arrived. The silence outside grew increasingly unnatural. No birds. No insects. Even the wind seemed absent. The road curved sharply around a hill. Then Noah saw it. A weathered wooden sign leaning crookedly beside the highway. Most of its paint had faded away. Only one word remained readable. Ashwood. Someone had tried to cover the letters with black paint years earlier. Time had peeled much of it away. The town still refused to disappear completely. Beyond the sign, the road descended into a shallow valley. Rows of houses slowly appeared between towering oak trees. A church steeple rose above them. A water tower stood exactly where it had appeared in the old photograph. Every building looked almost identical to the picture Daniel had supposedly taken 15 years before. Nothing had changed. Not one roof. Not one tree. Not one parked car. It looked less like a town. And more like a memory waiting for someone to remember it. Noah parked beside the weathered welcome sign and switched off the engine. For a few seconds he remained inside the truck, listening. Nothing. The silence felt wrong. Not empty. Watching. He stepped outside and closed the door. The sound echoed across the valley far longer than it should have. Then everything became quiet again. The town lay only a few hundred yards ahead. It looked peaceful. Comfortable. Almost inviting. Children rode bicycles along quiet streets. An elderly couple watered flowers outside a white wooden house. A mail carrier crossed the square carrying a leather satchel filled with letters. A golden retriever slept beneath the shade of an oak tree. It looked exactly like every small American town Noah had photographed during his career. Yet something immediately unsettled him. No one seemed surprised to see him. Not a single person glanced toward the unfamiliar truck. No curious looks. No cautious greetings. It was as though everyone had expected him to arrive. Noah slung his camera over his shoulder and walked toward the town square. The streets were remarkably clean. Not one piece of litter. Fresh flower beds decorated every sidewalk. Even the buildings looked strangely untouched by time. Cars parked along the street belonged to different decades. A polished 1957 Chevrolet rested beside a brand new pickup. Farther ahead stood a station wagon from the early 70s. Across the road sat a sedan Noah recognized from the late 80s. None of them carried license plates. That detail stopped him in his tracks. Every vehicle had empty brackets where plates should have been. The windows reflected only the cloudy sky. No fingerprints. No dust. As if they had been washed that very morning. He raised his camera and took his first photograph. The shutter clicked loudly. Every person on the street froze. Only for a heartbeat. Then they continued exactly as before. Noah lowered the camera. Perhaps he had imagined it. He kept walking. The center of Ashwood surrounded an old stone fountain. Crystal clear water flowed continuously from 4 carved lions. Children laughed while tossing pennies into the basin. The sound felt strangely rehearsed. Perfectly timed. Every laugh carried exactly the same rhythm. Noah photographed the fountain. Again. Everyone paused for the briefest instant. Again. Life resumed. His stomach tightened. A small cafe overlooked the square. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the open windows. Inside, nearly every table was occupied. Conversations filled the room. Yet as Noah stepped through the doorway. Silence. Every customer looked toward him. Not suspiciously. Not warmly. Simply. Knowingly. A waitress approached almost immediately. She looked to be in her early 30s, wearing a pale blue uniform that seemed untouched by wear. She smiled. "We've been expecting you." The sentence landed like ice. Noah forced a polite smile. "I don't think we've met." "We haven't." Her smile never faded. "You'll have the usual." She turned before he could answer. Moments later she returned carrying black coffee. Noah had never ordered. He looked into the cup. No cream. No sugar. Exactly how he drank it. His pulse quickened. "You know my name?" She nodded gently. "Of course." He waited. She offered no explanation. Instead, she quietly returned to serving other customers. Noah watched the room. No one seemed interested in him anymore. Forks scraped against plates. Coffee cups clinked softly. A radio behind the counter played an old country song he vaguely recognized. Everything looked perfectly normal. Until he noticed the calendar hanging beside the kitchen door. October. No year. Every page beneath it had been torn away. He finished the coffee quickly. When he reached for his wallet, the waitress shook her head. "You already paid." "I haven't." "You will." She smiled again. The words carried no threat. Only certainty. Outside, clouds covered the afternoon sun. The air had grown noticeably colder. Noah unfolded the old photograph again. Standing in exactly the same position as the original photographer, he compared the scene before him. Every detail matched. Every window. Every tree. Every bench. Even the bicycles leaned against the same storefront. 15 years. Nothing had changed. He raised the photograph beside his camera. One tiny detail caught his eye. A figure stood inside the church doorway. Almost hidden by shadow. The person hadn't been visible moments earlier. Noah zoomed in. The image became grainy. Yet unmistakable. A young man holding a camera. Dark jacket. Baseball cap. Exactly like the one Daniel always wore. Noah lowered the photograph. The church doorway was empty. He looked again. The figure had vanished. Without hesitation, he crossed the square. The church doors stood wide open. Inside. No one. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, covering the wooden pews with colored patterns. Dust floated peacefully through the air. An old Bible rested upon the altar. It looked untouched. No footprints disturbed the thin layer of dust covering the floor. Impossible. The church had appeared occupied only seconds ago. Noah slowly walked toward the altar. His footsteps echoed loudly. Halfway down the aisle. He noticed fresh footprints. Only one set. Leading away from the altar. Toward a narrow wooden door behind it. He followed. The small room beyond contained shelves filled with church records. Marriage certificates. Birth records. Funeral books. Every volume carefully arranged. He opened the newest register. The last recorded funeral had taken place. Yesterday. He frowned. Yesterday's date had been carefully written beside one name. Daniel Brooks. His hands began shaking. Age at death. Blank. Cause of death. Blank. Place of burial. Blank. Below the final entry, someone had written another name in fresh black ink. Noah Brooks. Every remaining line beside it had been left empty. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind him. Noah turned instantly. The room was empty. Yet a quiet sound drifted through the church. Not footsteps. A church bell. One slow chime. Then another. Then a third. Outside, people began leaving the streets. Shopkeepers quietly locked their doors. Children stopped playing. Curtains closed one house after another. Everyone moved with calm, practiced urgency. No panic. No confusion. Only routine. Noah looked at his watch. 5:43 p.m. Then he remembered the note. Leave before sunset. The sun had already begun slipping behind the distant hills. And for the first time since entering Ashwood, someone whispered his name from somewhere beneath the church floor. The whisper came again. Soft. Barely louder than a breath. Yet unmistakably clear. Noah. His body froze. The voice had not echoed through the church. It had risen from beneath the wooden floorboards. He instinctively looked around the empty room behind the altar. Nothing had changed. The shelves remained perfectly still. Dust floated lazily through the fading sunlight. The old funeral register still lay open before him, displaying his own unfinished name beneath Daniel's. Another whisper. Closer. Noah. This time he recognized it. Not perfectly. The voice sounded older. More exhausted. But there was no mistaking it. Daniel. His brother. For 15 years Noah had tried to remember exactly how Daniel sounded. Time had blurred those memories. Now every syllable came rushing back. Without thinking, he dropped to one knee and pressed his ear against the floor. Silence. Only the slow creaking of ancient wood. Then. 3 deliberate knocks. Knock. 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 Directly beneath him. His heartbeat exploded. He searched the room desperately. There had to be a basement. A trapdoor. Anything. Bookshelves covered every wall. An old wooden cabinet stood beside a stained glass window. A heavy carpet stretched across most of the floor. No obvious entrance. No stairs. No hatch. Yet someone, or something, had knocked from below. Outside, another church bell rang. The sound carried across the entire town. Immediately afterward, every clock inside the church stopped. The large grandfather clock near the entrance froze. Its pendulum halted in mid-swing. Even Noah's wristwatch stopped moving. 5:59 p.m. Exactly. The second hand refused to advance. The silence became unbearable. Then every light inside the church went out. Not gradually. Instantly. The stained glass windows darkened as though someone had painted over the evening sky. No sunset. No twilight. Only darkness. Noah switched on his flashlight. Its beam cut through the room. The shelves were still there. The altar remained untouched. But the funeral register had vanished. Only a rectangle of clean wood remained where it had rested. His own footprints across the dusty floor had disappeared as well. As though he had never entered the church. A sharp metallic sound echoed outside. Another. Then another. Dozens of locks turning simultaneously. He hurried toward the front entrance. The town square had become empty. Completely empty. Only moments earlier people had filled every sidewalk. Now every storefront stood abandoned. Every curtain had been drawn. Every parked car remained exactly where it had been. But there wasn't a single person anywhere. The fountain still flowed. Coins still rested beneath the water. Yet even the sound of splashing seemed strangely distant. Noah stepped outside. Cold air struck his face. Far colder than it should have been for early October. The sky had changed. There were no stars. No moon. Only an endless blanket of gray cloud stretching in every direction. He called out. Hello. Nothing answered. His own voice seemed swallowed before traveling more than a few yards. He hurried toward the cafe. The lights remained on. Coffee cups still rested upon the tables. Half-eaten meals remained untouched. Steam still rose from several mugs. Yet every chair stood empty. The waitress had vanished. No signs of panic. No signs anyone had left in a hurry. It looked as though every customer had simply disappeared in the middle of a sentence. Noah's untouched receipt rested beside the cup he had used earlier. Written across the bottom in fresh ink appeared a message that had not been there before. "You stayed too long." His breathing became shallow. He backed toward the door. A camera flash suddenly illuminated the room. Pure white light. For less than a second. Instinctively Noah spun around. No one. Another flash. This time outside the cafe. He rushed into the street. Again. Nothing. Only empty buildings. Another flash. Farther away. Near the church. Someone was taking photographs. He ran. The flashes continued. Always just beyond the next intersection. Each one revealing only empty streets before disappearing. His footsteps echoed unnaturally loudly across the silent town. Finally he reached the church again. Another flash erupted from behind the building. He rounded the corner. A narrow alley stretched into darkness. No one stood there. Only a single photograph lying face down on the wet pavement. Noah carefully picked it up. His blood ran cold. The photograph showed him standing inside the cafe. Looking out the window. It had been taken only minutes earlier. Someone had been watching him. Someone close enough to capture every detail. He turned the picture over. Written on the back were 4 words. "You're finally here." Another camera flash exploded directly behind him. Noah whirled around. For the briefest instant, illuminated by the fading light. A man stood across the street. Holding an old film camera. Wearing a dark jacket. A faded baseball cap. Daniel. Older. Thinner. His beard streaked with gray. But unmistakably Daniel. He didn't smile. He simply raised one hand. Pointed toward the water tower at the edge of town. And disappeared as the darkness swallowed him. Noah sprinted after him. Street after street blurred together. The figure remained just ahead. Always visible for only a second before vanishing around another corner. The water tower grew larger with every block. Its rusted metal legs disappeared into dense shadows. As Noah reached the fence surrounding it, he stopped. The ground beneath the tower was covered with hundreds of photographs. Thousands. They stretched across the grass like fallen autumn leaves. Every single photograph showed Noah. As a child. At graduation. Working assignments. Drinking coffee. Sleeping in airplanes. Walking city streets. Moments from nearly every year of his life. Some had clearly been taken decades before. Others had been taken earlier that very afternoon. Someone had documented his entire existence. In the center of the photographs rested a fresh roll of undeveloped film. Beside it lay a folded note. Noah opened it with trembling hands. Only one sentence had been written. "Don't let Sunday end." The note trembled in Noah's hands. "Don't let Sunday end." He read the sentence again. Then a third time. It sounded impossible. Sunday wasn't something anyone could stop. Time moved forward whether people wanted it to or not. Yet after everything he had witnessed during the last few hours, the warning no longer felt impossible. It felt literal. He slipped the note into his jacket beside the mysterious photograph that had brought him to Ashwood. The undeveloped roll of film still rested among the thousands of photographs scattered beneath the water tower. Noah carefully picked it up. It was warm. As though someone had been holding it only moments earlier. His camera bag contained an old portable film case he rarely used anymore. Years ago Daniel had insisted that digital photography could never fully replace film. "Film keeps secrets longer," he used to say. Noah suddenly remembered those words with painful clarity. He placed the roll safely into the case. The moment he closed the lid, a loud metallic groan echoed above him. The water tower. Its rusted structure vibrated violently. Bolts squealed. The enormous tank slowly rotated a few degrees, producing a deep grinding sound that rolled across the silent town. Paint flaked away from the metal. Hidden beneath decades of rust, faded white letters became visible. Sunday never ends. Noah stared upward. The words couldn't have been an accident. Someone had painted them deliberately. Long ago. Another camera flash burst somewhere behind the nearby houses. Daniel. Without hesitation Noah ran toward it. The streets had changed. He was certain of it. Buildings no longer stood where they had only minutes earlier. The grocery store had become an old movie theater. The cafe was gone. In its place stood a bookstore with cracked windows filled with yellowed novels. Even the church steeple seemed farther away. Ashwood was rearranging itself. Like pieces on a chessboard. Noah reached the corner where the flash had appeared. Nothing. Only another abandoned street. Then he noticed movement. Not ahead. Above. Curtains slowly shifted inside every second-story window surrounding him. Dozens of houses. Hundreds of windows. Someone stood behind every curtain. Watching. He couldn't see faces. Only silhouettes. Perfectly still. Every shadow remained motionless until Noah looked directly toward it. Then. The curtain quietly closed. One after another. The entire street disappeared behind drawn curtains. Noah suddenly realized something. The lights inside every house had returned. Golden light spilled through the fabric despite no one being visible outside. The town wasn't empty anymore. Its people had simply gone indoors. As if sunset had begun another part of their routine. He walked cautiously toward the nearest house. Fresh tire tracks crossed the driveway. A bicycle leaned against the porch railing. Children's toys lay scattered across the lawn. Everything suggested ordinary family life. He climbed the wooden steps. Knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Silence. Then a tiny voice drifted through the door. Barely audible. Go away. It sounded like a little girl. I'm looking for my brother. No response. My name is Noah Brooks. Several long seconds passed. Then another whisper. You're too late. The floor inside creaked. Someone walked away from the entrance. The house fell silent once more. Noah tried another home. Then another. The result never changed. Sometimes no one answered. Sometimes frightened voices whispered through locked doors. Every message carried the same meaning. Too late. Leave. Don't stay. The deeper darkness grew, the stranger the town became. Streetlights flickered to life without electricity. Old radios inside abandoned stores began playing songs from different decades. A 1950s jazz tune drifted from one building. An 80s rock ballad from another. Somewhere farther away, a children's choir softly sang a hymn Noah remembered hearing at his elementary school. Different years. Different eras. Blending together into one unsettling melody. His flashlight beam caught something nailed to a telephone pole. A missing person poster. The paper looked brand new. The photograph showed Daniel. Age 28. Below it appeared familiar words. Last seen in Ashwood. Noah reached to remove it. The paper crumbled instantly into dust. Another poster fluttered loose from the next pole. This one showed a woman. Different name. Different year. Another. A teenage boy. Another. An elderly couple. Another. A police officer. The farther Noah walked, the more posters appeared. Hundreds. Thousands. Every missing person had vanished in Ashwood. Some dates stretched back nearly a century. Others were only months old. The town had been collecting people for generations. A distant siren suddenly echoed through the streets. Not police. Not ambulance. Something older. A long mechanical wail that rose and fell slowly. Every light inside every house went dark at once. Noah's flashlight remained the only light left. Then. One window illuminated. At the end of the street. Second floor. Someone stood there, holding a lantern. The figure slowly lifted one hand, pointing toward the old school building across town. Noah couldn't see the face, only the outline. Then the lantern was extinguished. Darkness swallowed the window. The school stood 3 blocks away. Its brick walls were cracked. The American flag outside hung perfectly still despite the cold wind that had begun blowing through Ashwood. The front doors stood slightly open. A faint yellow glow flickered somewhere inside. Noah stepped across the threshold. The hallway smelled of chalk, old paper, and rain-soaked wood. Lockers lined both walls. Every classroom door stood open. Tiny desks remained neatly arranged. Homework still rested upon them, as though students had simply stood up in the middle of class and never returned. His flashlight landed on a blackboard. Fresh white chalk covered its surface. Only 4 words. Class never ends here. Before Noah could react, a school bell rang. Loud. Sharp. Deafening. Every classroom door slammed shut at exactly the same moment. The lights blinked once. Twice. Then the hallway filled with the sound of children's footsteps. Hundreds of them. Running. Laughing. Whispering. Yet Noah could see. There wasn't a single child anywhere. The footsteps surrounded Noah. Hundreds of them. Light. Fast. The unmistakable sound of children rushing through crowded school hallways between classes. Lockers slammed shut. Laughter echoed around every corner. Someone bounced a basketball somewhere on the 2nd floor. A teacher called for silence. The sounds were so real that Noah instinctively stepped aside, expecting students to pour into the hallway. No one came. The corridor remained completely empty. His flashlight swept across rows of silent lockers. Not a single shadow moved. Yet the invisible crowd continued flowing around him. He could almost feel shoulders brushing past his arms. Cold air rushed against his face as unseen figures hurried by. Then, every sound stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. A single locker door slowly creaked open. Noah approached carefully. Inside hung an old denim jacket. A worn backpack rested beneath it. The name stitched onto the backpack made his stomach tighten. Daniel Brooks. The fabric looked untouched by time. Inside the front pocket lay several school notebooks. One mathematics textbook. An old disposable camera. And a folded map of Ashwood. Noah unfolded it carefully. The town looked nothing like the streets he had walked through that afternoon. The map showed dozens of buildings he had never seen. A hospital. A train depot. A courthouse. A large public library. Everyone had been circled in red ink. At the very center of the map, someone had drawn a thick black circle around one location. Ashwood Elementary School. Exactly where Noah stood now. Beneath it, written in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting, appeared one sentence. The town isn't disappearing. It's hiding. Noah stared at the words. His brother had been here. Not just passing through. Investigating. Trying to understand. Just like Noah. A loud scraping noise echoed from somewhere upstairs. Slow. Heavy. Like furniture being dragged across wooden floors. His flashlight beam climbed the staircase. Dust covered every step. Except one narrow trail of fresh footprints. Large boots. Only one person. They had appeared moments ago. Without thinking, Noah followed. The 2nd floor was darker. The windows were covered from the inside with faded curtains. Every classroom looked abandoned. Books still rested on desks. Maps still hung from classroom walls. An American flag stood beside every blackboard. Everything appeared frozen in time. One classroom, however, stood out. Room 214. Its door remained closed. Every other room had been left open. As Noah reached for the handle, he noticed something carved into the wood. Hundreds of names. Some old. Some fresh. Students. Teachers. Visitors. Missing people. Thousands of initials layered over decades. Near the bottom, he found two names. Daniel Brooks. Directly beneath it. Freshly carved. Noah Brooks. His breath caught. He had never touched the door. Yet his own name was already there. The handle turned by itself. The classroom slowly opened. Rows of desks faced a large chalkboard. A projector rested on the teacher's desk. Dust covered everything. Except one chair. Someone had been sitting there recently. The projector suddenly clicked on. Without electricity. Without anyone touching it. Bright light filled the room. An old film began playing against the front wall. Black and white images flickered into existence. At first Noah couldn't understand what he was seeing. Children running across the playground. Teachers waving goodbye. Families gathering outside the school. Normal moments. Happy moments. Then the date appeared. October 8, 1963. The film continued. Every few seconds the year changed. 1968. 1969. 1970. 1971. 1972. 1973. Different decades. Different students. Different teachers. Yet every film ended exactly the same way. The school bell rang. Everyone stopped moving. Every child turned toward the camera. Then, they simply disappeared. Not one by one. All at once. Leaving empty classrooms behind. The projector continued advancing. Frame after frame. Year after year. Finally. One last recording began. October 12, 1989. Daniel. Noah stumbled backward. His brother appeared carrying the same camera he had always loved. He looked exhausted. Older than 28. As though he hadn't slept for weeks. Daniel spoke directly into the camera. There was no sound. Only moving lips. Noah desperately tried reading them. 3 words repeated again and again. Don't trust Sunday. The recording shook violently. Daniel suddenly looked over his shoulder. Fear flooded his face. He grabbed the camera. Started running. The picture bounced wildly through unfamiliar streets. Buildings blurred together. Then, the image stopped. Daniel stood inside the very classroom Noah occupied now. He turned toward the camera one final time. Raised one finger. Pointing. Not behind himself. Not toward the door. Toward the ceiling. The recording abruptly ended. The projector shut off. Darkness swallowed the room. Noah slowly looked upward. The ceiling. One square ceiling panel hung slightly lower than the others. He climbed onto the teacher's desk. Pushed against the panel. It lifted easily. A narrow crawlspace stretched above the classroom. His flashlight revealed dozens of cardboard storage boxes. Old school records. Broken chairs. Dust-covered sports equipment. And a metal film canister. Fresh. Without dust. Someone had placed it there recently. Beside it rested another folded letter. His hands trembled as he opened it. This one contained far more than a single sentence. It read, Noah. If you're reading this, then I failed. The town chooses one person every Sunday. Everyone else forgets they ever existed. That is how Ashwood survives. It feeds on memory. The people aren't dead. They're erased. I've spent years trying to escape. Time doesn't move here the way it does outside. If you found this, it means the town has chosen you next. Do not look into the clock tower when midnight comes. No matter what you hear. No matter who calls your name. Do not look up. The letter ended there. No signature. None was needed. Noah folded it slowly. Outside the school. A clock began striking. 1. 2. 3. Until 12 deep chimes rolled across Ashwood. Midnight had arrived. And somewhere above the building, something enormous began walking across the roof. The footsteps above the ceiling were impossibly heavy. Each one sent fine dust drifting through the cracks between the wooden beams. Boom! Another step. The entire classroom trembled. Noah remained frozen on top of the teacher's desk, Daniel's letter still clutched tightly in one hand. Do not look into the clock tower when midnight comes. No matter what you hear. Do not look up. The warning echoed inside his mind. Another step rolled across the roof. Then another. Whatever moved above the school wasn't walking randomly. It circled the building with slow, deliberate precision. Almost searching. Noah carefully lowered himself from the desk. The crawlspace remained open above him. The metal film canister still rested inside. He slipped it into his backpack before quietly replacing the ceiling panel. The footsteps immediately stopped. Silence. Complete. His pulse hammered inside his ears. Had it heard him? A faint clicking sound drifted from somewhere outside. Click. 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 Camera shutters. Hundreds of them. Noah approached the classroom window and carefully moved one corner of the curtain aside. His breath caught. The schoolyard was full. Not with children. With photographers. Dozens. No. Hundreds. Every one of them stood perfectly still beneath the moonless sky. Men. Women. Teenagers. Old people. Each carried an old-fashioned film camera. Each wore clothes from a different decade. Some looked as though they had stepped out of the 1940s. Others wore fashions from the 60s, the 80s, or the early 2000s. But every camera was pointed toward the school. Toward him. No one moved. Then, without warning, every flash fired at exactly the same moment. White light exploded through every classroom window. Noah instinctively shut his eyes. When he opened them again, the photographers were gone. Only the empty playground remained. His flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then died completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Only pale gray moonlight filtered through the curtains. Noah reached for his spare flashlight. Before he could switch it on, someone whispered directly behind him. Don't. He spun around. Daniel stood beside the teacher's desk. Not transparent. Not ghostly. Real. Older than Noah remembered. His beard had turned gray. Deep lines surrounded exhausted eyes that looked as though they hadn't slept in years. Neither brother spoke. Neither moved. They simply stared at one another. Then Daniel slowly shook his head. His lips formed silent words. Don't trust me. Noah's blood ran cold. A second later, Daniel smiled. The expression looked wrong. Forced. Almost painful. Then he spoke aloud. You finally found me. The voice sounded exactly right. Too right. Everything about him felt genuine. Yet Daniel himself had warned him not to trust what he saw. Noah took one careful step backward. The figure copied him. Perfectly. Another. Again. Almost like a reflection inside a mirror. Then Noah noticed something impossible. Daniel cast no shadow. The moonlight reached every corner of the room except where he stood. No shadow. No reflection in the classroom windows. Only the appearance of his brother. I've been waiting for you, Daniel said softly. Noah forced himself not to answer. Daniel's smile faded. You read my letters. Silence. You came exactly when I hoped. Still Noah remained quiet. Daniel sighed. Good. For the first time, his expression became genuine. There are rules now. Before Noah could react, Daniel's body flickered. Like an old strip of damaged film. One moment he stood beside the desk. The next, he appeared near the classroom door. Then beside the blackboard. Then outside the window. 3 different Daniels. Each looking toward Noah. Each smiling differently. One frightened. One calm. One furious. Then all three disappeared. Only empty silence remained. The classroom door slowly creaked open by itself. Beyond it, the hallway looked different. Longer. Much longer. The opposite wall had vanished. Instead, the corridor stretched endlessly into darkness. Rows of lockers continued farther than the eye could follow. Every locker door stood open. Inside each locker hung photographs. Thousands of them. Noah stepped into the hallway. Every photograph showed the same person. Himself. Age 5. Age 10. High school graduation. College. His first newspaper assignment. His first apartment. Every important moment of his life. As he walked deeper into the corridor, the photographs became stranger. Pictures of events that had never happened. Noah wearing a military uniform. Noah standing beside a wife he had never met. Noah holding a baby. Noah growing old on a quiet farm. Entire lives. Entire futures. All impossible. A quiet voice echoed through the endless hallway. The town keeps every life you never lived. The voice belonged to no one. It came from everywhere. Every locker. Every photograph. Every shadow. Noah kept walking. The corridor should have ended at the gymnasium. Instead, he reached a pair of enormous wooden doors he had never seen before. Across them, carved into dark oak, appeared a single sentence. The Memory Archive. His heart skipped. Archive. The same word Daniel had written repeatedly in his old notebooks. Slowly, Noah pushed the doors open. Beyond them lay an enormous circular library unlike anything he had ever imagined. Shelves climbed hundreds of feet toward a ceiling hidden in darkness. Millions of photographs filled endless wooden cabinets. Glass negatives. Film reels. Family albums. Portraits. School pictures. Wedding photographs. Every image carefully labeled with names and dates. A sign above the nearest cabinet read, "Everyone the world has forgotten." Noah slowly reached toward one photograph. It showed a smiling little girl holding a red balloon. The name beneath it had been crossed out. Completely erased. As his fingers touched the frame, he suddenly remembered her. He didn't know how. He had never met her. Yet memories flooded into his mind. A girl laughing beside a lake. A birthday cake. A yellow bicycle. Then. Nothing. The memories vanished again. The photograph turned blank. The girl's face slowly disappeared before his eyes. She had been forgotten. Once more. A quiet voice spoke from somewhere deep within the impossible library. Not Daniel. Not human. Ancient. Patient. You remember too much. A lantern slowly ignited between the endless shelves. Then another. Then another. One by one, hundreds of lanterns illuminated a narrow path leading into the darkness. At the far end of that path, a tall figure wearing a long black coat slowly stepped into the light. Its face remained hidden beneath the brim of an old ranger's hat. In one hand, it carried an antique camera. In the other, a thick leather book. The figure stopped. Then slowly opened the book. Without writing a single word, a fresh line appeared across the empty page. Noah Brooks. Next to be forgotten. The words appeared by themselves. No ink touched the paper. No hand moved across the page. Yet the ancient leather book slowly filled with elegant black letters. Noah Brooks. Next to be forgotten. The tall figure closed the book. The sound echoed through the endless archive like a judge striking a gavel. Noah remained motionless. Every instinct told him to run. Instead, he watched. The figure removed the old camera hanging from its shoulder. Unlike every camera Noah had ever seen, this one contained no lens. Only an empty black circle that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. The figure slowly lifted it toward Noah. Click. The shutter released. Nothing flashed. No sound followed except the quiet turning of thousands of paper pages throughout the endless archive. At once, Noah's head exploded with pain. A memory vanished. Not faded. Vanished. He struggled to remember the color of his childhood bedroom. Nothing. Only emptiness. He knew he had once slept there. He remembered the house. He remembered his parents. But the room itself had disappeared from his mind as though it had never existed. The figure lowered the camera. Another page inside the leather book filled itself. First memory collected. Noah finally understood. Ashwood wasn't stealing people first. It was stealing them one memory at a time. When enough memories disappeared, the person disappeared too. Not physically. From everyone. Forever. He stepped backward. The figure calmly took another step forward. Every lantern along the narrow path flickered. Photographs lining nearby shelves began changing. Faces slowly faded. Names disappeared. Entire family albums turned blank. The archive was feeding. Suddenly another voice echoed across the enormous room. You came farther than I expected. Daniel. This time the voice sounded real. Noah turned. His brother emerged from between towering shelves carrying an old lantern. He looked exhausted. His jacket was torn. Gray streaks covered his beard. His eyes were hollow from years without proper sleep. Most importantly, he cast a shadow. A real one. The dark figure stopped moving. Daniel never looked toward it. Instead, he fixed his eyes on Noah. You finally found the keeper. The figure remained silent. Daniel slowly walked closer. Don't look at the book. Naturally. Noah looked. The keeper opened another page. This one wasn't blank. It contained hundreds of names. Every line had been crossed out except one. Daniel Brooks. His brother's name remained untouched. What does that mean? Noah whispered. Daniel's expression grew heavier. I'm the reason you're here. The words hung in the air. Years of questions crashed together inside Noah's mind. You disappeared. I stayed. You could have come home. Daniel slowly shook his head. There wasn't a home to return to. He looked around the endless archive. This place doesn't exist inside normal time. Noah frowned. Daniel continued. When I entered Ashwood, I was 28. He smiled bitterly. I've been here 36 years. Noah's heart stopped. 36. Outside. Only 15 years had passed. Time inside Ashwood moved differently. Daniel looked 60. Now Noah understood why. The town stretches every Sunday, Daniel said quietly. Outside, another week begins. In here. He glanced upward toward the impossible darkness above the shelves. Sunday never ends. The keeper slowly turned another page. More black letters appeared. Second memory pending. Daniel stepped between Noah and the figure. You don't have much time. What is it? The keeper isn't a person. The ancient figure remained perfectly still. It was once. Daniel looked toward the endless shelves. Every generation someone stays behind. They become responsible for preserving every forgotten memory. And if they refuse? Daniel looked directly into Noah's eyes. The town chooses someone else. Silence filled the archive. Noah slowly understood. You. Daniel nodded. I refused. What happened? The keeper couldn't leave. It needed someone to replace it. Another page turned. The black figure slowly lifted its empty camera again. Click. Pain stabbed through Noah's skull. Another memory vanished. His first day of college. Gone. He remembered graduating. He remembered becoming a journalist. Everything between. Empty. His knees nearly buckled. Daniel grabbed his shoulder. It's accelerating. What do we do? Daniel looked toward the enormous shelves. There is only one way. He reached into his coat. Carefully. He removed an old photograph. Noah recognized it immediately. The same black and white picture that had arrived inside the mysterious envelope. Ashwood. Main Street. 1989. Daniel handed it over. It's not a photograph. What? It's a door. Before Noah could ask another question, the keeper began walking. Not toward them. Toward one enormous cabinet standing alone at the center of the archive. Unlike every other shelf, this one contained no photographs. Only mirrors. Hundreds of mirrors. Each reflected a different version of Ashwood. One showed children playing. Another showed empty streets. Another showed burning buildings. Another showed snow despite the season. One mirror reflected Noah. Only. He was much older. Completely alone. Standing beneath the town's clock tower. The keeper stopped before that mirror. Its hand slowly reached toward the glass. Daniel's face turned pale. No. The keeper touched the reflection. The entire archive shook violently. Every lantern extinguished. Thousands of photographs burst from the shelves like birds taking flight. They filled the air. Millions of forgotten faces circled through the darkness. Men. Women. Children. Entire generations. Each whispering the same sentence. Remember us. The sound became deafening. Noah covered his ears. The photographs spiraled faster and faster until they formed a massive vortex above the archive. Within it, he saw the truth. Ashwood had never been built around a town. The town had been built around the clock tower. And beneath that tower, something enormous had been sleeping. Something that had been feeding on forgotten memories for over a century. The entire archive trembled. Stone cracked. Shelves collapsed one after another. Daniel looked toward Noah with absolute certainty. The town is waking up. Then, for the first time since Noah had arrived in Ashwood, the clock tower outside began to ring. Not 12 times. Not once. It never stopped. The bell never stopped. Its deep metallic sound rolled across Ashwood like waves crashing against an endless shoreline. One chime blended into the next. The entire archive shook violently. Towering shelves collapsed one after another, sending millions of photographs swirling through the air like a blizzard of forgotten lives. The keeper remained perfectly still beneath the storm. Its black coat fluttered although there was no wind. Daniel grabbed Noah by the arm. We have to leave. Now. The brothers ran. Behind them, the endless library fractured as cracks raced across the marble floor. Entire cabinets vanished into darkness. Every photograph that touched the ground dissolved into pale light before disappearing completely. As Noah sprinted between the falling shelves, something impossible happened. Each photograph he passed showed him. Not just one version. Thousands. One where he had become a soldier. One where he had died as a child. One where Daniel had never disappeared. One where their parents had grown old together. One where Noah had never even been born. Every possible life existed inside the archive. Every forgotten choice. Every abandoned future. Daniel pulled him forward. Don't look. But Noah couldn't stop. One photograph froze him in place. It showed the entire Brooks family standing together in front of their childhood home. Daniel smiled. Their mother laughed. Their father held a barbecue spatula, exactly as he had every summer. No empty spaces. No grief. No disappearance. Just happiness. Noah reached toward the picture. The moment his fingertips touched it, the world disappeared. Warm sunlight. The smell of fresh-cut grass. Children laughing somewhere nearby. He stood in the backyard of the house where he had grown up. His father was grilling hamburgers. His mother arranged lemonade on a wooden table. Daniel tossed a baseball toward him. Everything looked real. Perfect. You've been asleep all afternoon, Daniel laughed. You still coming fishing tomorrow? Noah stared at him. There wasn't a single gray hair. No wrinkles. No exhaustion. Exactly 28 years old. Exactly as he should have been. Tears filled Noah's eyes. This was impossible. Yet every sensation felt real. The warmth of the sun. The breeze against his face. The smell of charcoal. His mother smiled at him. What are you waiting for? For one beautiful moment. He wanted to stay. No investigations. No missing brother. No Ashwood. Just home. Then he noticed something strange. No birds flew overhead. The trees never moved. His parents laughed. The exact same laugh. Again. And again. Every 12 seconds. Daniel threw the baseball. It landed in exactly the same place every time. The smoke rising from the grill never changed direction. Everything repeated. Like a film trapped in an endless loop. This wasn't home. It was a memory. A perfect prison. Daniel's voice echoed from somewhere far away. Noah. The backyard cracked. Like glass. The sky shattered into thousands of fragments. Sunlight disappeared. The illusion exploded. Noah stumbled backward into the collapsing archive. Daniel caught him before he fell. You almost stayed. I saw them. I know. Daniel looked away. So did I. Another deafening bell echoed through the darkness. This time the keeper moved. It didn't chase them. It walked calmly toward the center of the archive. Toward the largest mirror. The surface no longer reflected Ashwood. Instead, it reflected the clock tower. Only now Noah could finally see what stood beneath it. His blood froze. The tower had no foundation. It rose from the back of something unimaginably enormous. A creature. Its body stretched beneath the entire town like the roots of an ancient tree. Stone streets rested upon its back. Buildings clung to its motionless body. The clock tower had never been built on land. Ashwood itself rested upon the sleeping creature. The town. Noah whispered. Daniel nodded. It isn't haunted. It's alive. The keeper reached toward the mirror. The creature's eyes slowly opened. Miles wide. Golden. Ancient. The bell immediately changed. No longer metallic. Now it sounded like a heartbeat. Boom. 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 Each beat shook every building in Ashwood. Daniel looked terrified for the first time. It knows you're here. What is it? No one remembers. Even the keeper. Daniel's face darkened. The keeper remembers everything. Another heartbeat. The mirrors surrounding them exploded simultaneously. Glass rained across the archive. Within every broken shard Noah caught brief glimpses of people waking across America. A grandmother suddenly remembering a forgotten daughter. A man recognizing his missing brother after 40 years. Children asking about relatives their parents had somehow forgotten. The creature wasn't only stealing memories. It was choosing which memories humanity kept. Which people history remembered. Which lives vanished forever. Another page filled itself inside the keeper's book. Noah didn't need to look. He already knew what it said. Third memory collected. He suddenly realized he could no longer remember his mother's face. He knew she had loved him. He remembered her voice. But her face. Blank. Pure emptiness. Panic gripped him. Daniel saw it immediately. It's happening faster. I can't remember her. I know. Daniel closed his eyes. I don't remember Dad anymore. The words hit Noah harder than anything else. His own brother had lived here so long that even his parents were disappearing from memory. The keeper calmly turned another page. Only a handful remained. Daniel looked toward the collapsing ceiling. We're almost out of time. For what? Daniel reached into his jacket. This time he removed a rusted brass key. Its head was shaped like a clock face permanently pointing to midnight. I spent 36 years looking for this. What does it open? Daniel looked toward the distant clock tower visible through the broken mirrors. The only door Ashwood has ever been afraid of. Another heartbeat echoed. The entire archive split down the middle. A massive crack raced beneath their feet. Through it Noah saw something far below. Not darkness. An ocean. An endless black ocean filled with floating photographs. Millions upon millions of them. Every forgotten life drifting silently beneath the town. Daniel pulled Noah toward the exit. Run. Behind them, the keeper did not follow. Instead, it slowly closed the leather book. For the first time. It spoke. Its voice was neither male nor female. Old enough to sound like the earth itself. You cannot destroy memory. Daniel never looked back. No. His voice trembled. But we can set it free. The brothers burst from the collapsing archive into the cold streets of Ashwood. The town had transformed completely. The sky was no longer gray. It had become a swirling sea of photographs. Every building slowly faded in and out of existence. Some houses appeared brand new. Others instantly aged into ruins before rebuilding themselves again. Time itself was breaking apart. Far above the rooftops. The clock tower stood at the center of it all. Its enormous hands finally moved for the first time in more than a century. They slowly turned. Toward 12:01. The massive clock hands groaned as they moved. For more than a century, they had pointed to midnight. Now, inch by inch, they crossed into 12:01. The moment they shifted, the entire town screamed. Not the people. The streets. The buildings. The sidewalks beneath Noah's feet. Ashwood itself let out a low, terrifying cry that seemed to come from every brick, every tree, and every window at once. The ground buckled violently. Daniel grabbed Noah before he lost his balance. It has never happened before. What? The clock has never gone past midnight. A deafening crack split the sky. It wasn't lightning. The sky itself was tearing apart. Above the town, the endless sea of floating photographs began raining downward. Millions of pictures drifted through the air like snow. Every photograph that touched the ground dissolved into glowing particles. As they vanished, memories flooded back into the world beyond Ashwood. Somewhere far away. A woman suddenly remembered the daughter who had disappeared 40 years earlier. A retired detective recalled an unsolved missing person case that had haunted him his entire career. Parents remembered children they had mourned for only days before somehow forgetting they had ever existed. History itself was beginning to heal. But Ashwood was dying. Buildings aged before Noah's eyes. Fresh paint peeled away in seconds. Windows shattered. Brick walls crumbled into dust. The beautiful little town was revealing its true age. More than 100 years of decay rushed across every street. Daniel stared at the collapsing houses. It can't hold together much longer. The brass key felt strangely warm inside Noah's hand. The tiny clock carved into its head now pointed to 12:01 instead of midnight. Without understanding why, Noah knew where it belonged. The tower. Daniel nodded. The door is underneath. They ran. The road twisted beneath their feet as if something enormous shifted deep below the earth. Streetlights bent sideways. Telephone poles snapped like matchsticks. The church bell crashed through the roof, sending stone flying across the empty square. As they reached Main Street, Noah stopped. The people of Ashwood had returned. Hundreds of them. Men. Women. Children. Every resident stood silently outside their homes. No longer smiling. No longer pretending. They simply watched the brothers pass. Their faces carried neither fear nor anger. Only sadness. An elderly woman slowly stepped forward. She couldn't have been older than 70. Yet her eyes held centuries of exhaustion. She looked directly at Noah. "We remember." Her voice trembled. For the first time. One by one, every resident placed a hand over their heart. Then they began disappearing. Not violently. Not painfully. Their bodies slowly dissolved into countless glowing photographs that floated upward toward the broken sky. No screams. Only peace. Daniel lowered his head. They were prisoners too. Within moments the streets stood empty again. Not abandoned. Freed. Only the clock tower remained. It rose above the dying town like the last surviving piece of another world. As Noah and Daniel reached its massive wooden doors, they discovered there were no handles. No lock. Only a circular indentation exactly the size of the brass key. Noah inserted it. The entire tower trembled. Ancient gears hidden inside the stone walls began turning. The doors slowly opened inward. Cold air rushed out. Not cold from winter. Cold from somewhere beyond time. Inside waited a spiral staircase disappearing into darkness below. Not upward. Downward. Daniel looked at Noah. This is where I stopped. You've never been inside? I couldn't. Why? Daniel smiled sadly. Because the town had already chosen me. The brothers descended together. Every step carried them farther beneath Ashwood. The stone walls gradually changed. Rock became polished black stone. Black stone became something smooth and organic. The staircase no longer felt carved. It felt grown. Like descending through the inside of an enormous living creature. The heartbeat echoed constantly now. Boom. 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 Each pulse vibrated through the walls. At last they reached the bottom. The staircase ended before a vast underground chamber. Noah forgot to breathe. The creature filled the impossible cavern. Only part of it was visible. An eye larger than a house. Dark skin covered in patterns resembling ancient maps. Roots, or perhaps veins, spread throughout the chamber before extending upward into every building above. Ashwood had never stood upon the creature. It had grown from it. At the center of the chamber floated an enormous crystal clock. Instead of numbers. Its face contained thousands of photographs. Every second the images changed. People appeared. People vanished. Entire lives flickered across its surface. Daniel whispered. The heart of memory. The creature's golden eye slowly turned toward them. No anger. No hatred. Only endless loneliness. Then. Something impossible happened. It spoke directly into Noah's mind. I never wanted to be worshipped. The voice felt older than language itself. I only wished to remember. Images flooded Noah's thoughts. More than a century earlier. Settlers had discovered the sleeping creature beneath the valley. It had been dying. Every forgotten memory weakened it. One grieving father had begged the creature to let him see his dead daughter one last time. The creature granted the wish. Word spread. More people came. Each asking to remember someone they had lost. The creature absorbed those memories to preserve them forever. But human greed changed everything. Soon people demanded impossible things. Forgotten fortunes. Lost loves. Erased mistakes. The burden became unbearable. To survive. The creature began taking memories instead of simply protecting them. Ashwood became its prison. And humanity slowly forgot every person it consumed. Tears filled Noah's eyes. It had never been evil. Only alone. Only starving. The crystal clock suddenly cracked. A thin fracture spread across its surface. Then another. The creature's eye widened. Daniel stepped forward. It doesn't have much time. The voice returned. Neither do you. The chamber began collapsing. Massive stones crashed around them. The creature slowly closed its eye. One final memory entered Noah's mind. Not his own. Daniel. Standing in this very chamber 36 years earlier. Unable to make the choice Noah now faced. Run. Or remain. The brass key crumbled into dust inside Noah's hand. The crystal clock shattered completely. And somewhere high above them. For the very first time in history. Monday began. Monday arrived with silence. Not the unnatural silence that had haunted Ashwood for more than a century. This silence felt alive. The endless ringing of the clock tower had stopped. The heartbeat beneath the earth had faded. For the first time since Noah had crossed the weathered welcome sign, the world felt real again. Dust drifted through the collapsing underground chamber. Huge pieces of stone crashed into the darkness, but strangely, the creature no longer tried to protect itself. Its enormous golden eye remained fixed on Noah. There was no fear inside it. Only gratitude. The shattered crystal clock floated in thousands of glowing fragments around the cavern, each piece carrying memories that had been imprisoned for generations. Faces. Names. Entire lives. They slowly rose toward the ceiling like stars returning to the night sky. Daniel watched them with tears in his eyes. They're going home. Every glowing fragment that reached the surface burst into countless sparks that scattered across the world. At that exact moment, thousands of families awakened from impossible dreams. Old women suddenly remembered sons they had buried decades earlier. Children asked about brothers and sisters their parents had somehow forgotten. Police stations across America received confused phone calls about missing person cases that officially no longer existed. Boxes of forgotten evidence suddenly made sense. Old photographs no one could explain finally had names again. History was repairing itself. Ashwood had released everything it had stolen. The creature slowly lowered its head. Its voice entered Noah's mind one final time. "Thank you, for remembering me." The golden eye gently closed. The heartbeat ended forever. Nothing terrible happened. No explosion. No final scream. Only peace. The roots spreading beneath the chamber slowly turned into ordinary stone. The impossible living walls became rock. The ancient prison had finally died. A violent tremor shook the cavern. Daniel looked upward. "We have to leave." The staircase behind them was already collapsing. The brothers ran. Stone blocks crashed around them. Dust filled the air so thickly Noah could barely breathe. Several steps disappeared beneath Daniel's feet, but Noah caught his arm and pulled him upward. Together they climbed toward the surface. Each level of the tower collapsed moments after they passed. Ancient gears burst apart. Bronze bells shattered. Wooden beams snapped like dry branches. At last they burst through the massive front doors just as the entire clock tower began falling behind them. The top leaned. Stone cracked. Then, with a deafening roar, the tower collapsed into itself. A cloud of dust rolled across the valley. When the air finally cleared, nothing remained. No tower. No church. No school. No cafe. No water tower. No houses. Ashwood had vanished. The valley was empty. Only green grass moved gently beneath the morning wind. Birds sang. For the first time. Real birds. Noah slowly turned in a circle. There wasn't even a road anymore. Only an open field stretching toward distant forests. It looked as though the town had never existed. Daniel stood beside him. For several minutes neither brother spoke. The morning sun warmed their faces. Real sunlight. Not another illusion. Finally Daniel smiled. "I forgot what Monday looked like." Noah laughed through tears. "So did I." They began walking. No destination. Only a way. Hours later they reached a county highway where a passing truck stopped beside them. The elderly driver rolled down his window. "You boys lost?" Noah looked at Daniel. His brother smiled. "Not anymore." The driver offered them a ride into the nearest town. During the drive Noah glanced repeatedly at Daniel, almost afraid he might disappear if he looked away. But Daniel remained there. Real. Alive. Outside the truck windows the world looked unchanged. Gas stations. Farmhouses. Billboards. People beginning ordinary Monday mornings. None of them knew how close history had come to forgetting itself. A week later newspapers across the country published extraordinary stories. Police reopened thousands of missing person investigations after witnesses unexpectedly recovered forgotten memories. Families reunited with people officially declared non-existent. Historians discovered records that had somehow vanished decades earlier. Experts called it one of the strangest psychological events ever recorded. No one found a scientific explanation. No one mentioned Ashwood. Because no map contained that name. 3 months later Noah returned to photojournalism. His first exhibition carried a simple title. Remember. It contained hundreds of photographs. None showed monsters. None showed supernatural events. Only ordinary people. Families. Children. Neighbors. Friends. Beneath every picture appeared one sentence. Every life deserves to be remembered. The exhibition traveled across America. Millions visited. Few understood why they cried while looking at the photographs. They simply felt that someone important had finally come home. Daniel never returned to photography. Instead, he bought a small cabin beside a quiet lake in Oregon. Every Sunday he and Noah met there for breakfast. No exceptions. Neither brother ever spoke much about Ashwood. They didn't need to. Sometimes silence carried enough memories. Years passed. Their parents grew older. They spent countless evenings together, making up for the decades Ashwood had stolen. One autumn afternoon Noah found the old envelope that had started everything. He was certain he had thrown it away years before. Yet there it was, lying inside a drawer. The paper looked new. Inside rested only one photograph. Not Ashwood. Just two little boys standing beside a lake. One held a fishing rod. The other laughed at something outside the frame. Daniel and Noah. On the back someone had written 6 simple words. Some memories save more than lives. There was no signature. No return address. No explanation. Noah smiled, placed the photograph into a family album, and quietly closed the cover. Outside, the church bells from a nearby town began ringing. It was Monday. And this time continued forward.